Și mă gândeam că pentru mine ideea de lider oricum presupune niște eforturi și abilități foarte mari, dar să fii lider într-o perioadă atât de dificilă, cred că presupune mult mai mult decât eforturi substanțiale. Și mă gândeam așa că dacă în general ideea de igienă emoțională este importantă, deși aș zice eu că cel puțin în societatea românească este destul de necunoscută, în perioada de pandemie și în perioada asta dificilă, aș zice că importanța crește foarte tare. Eu o să vă vorbesc în câteva minute, nu foarte lung, despre ceea ce înseamnă limite și dacă ar fi să dau așa o scurtă definiție, limitele sunt granițele care arată unde mă termin eu și încep ceilalți, adică cum pot eu să-mi împlinesc nevoile în viața de zi cu zi, în așa fel încât să nu calc în picioare nevoile celorlalți și totuși să-mi fie bine. Nu e mereu ușor, dar e foarte sănătos și ca toate lucrurile care sunt sănătoase și importante presupun efort. Limitele sunt un semn al sănătății emoționale sau, cu alte cuvinte, dacă vrem să avem igiena asta emoțională bună, ar trebui să avem limite în toate relațiile pe care le avem, adică de la familie, la colegi, la prieteni, la șefi, poate la parteneri. Pe toate nivelele e nevoie de limite, dar limite diferite în funcție de relațiile pe care le avem. Gândindu-mă la ce o să spun, mă gândeam oare cum ar trebui să arate limitele noastre într-o perioadă grea ca aceasta pe care o trăim. Am făcut o scurtă listă care nu e nici pe departe exhaustivă, dar dacă rămânem cu ea și punem în practică este excelent. Un prim lucru la care m-am gândit este că în perioada aceasta este foarte important să conștientizăm informațiile cu care intrăm în contact. Fără să ne dăm seama, creierul nostru este bombardat zi de zi cu informație care aparent, zicem noi, nu, nici n-am băgat-o de seamă, nici n-am ținut-o minte, n-a fost mare lucru, dar peste informația respectivă vine o altă informație și o altă informație care, fără să ne dăm seama, va influența modul în care noi reacționăm la realitatea pe care o trăim. Și anume, haideți să fim atenți cât de des aud știri, cât de des primesc în newsfeed știri despre ceea ce se întâmplă, cu ce fel de oameni sunt înconjurat și ce fel de informații aduc în viața mea. Și să încercăm să conștientizăm care sunt toate sursele de unde primesc informații, că sigur e mai mult decât una sau două. Un al doilea lucru în lista mea este scanarea modului în care îți consumi energia. Nu știu cum arăta viața ta înainte, dar eu mi-am dat seama că lucrurile pentru care înainte aveam energie, poate mă angajam în conversații pe Facebook, Instagram, orice altă platformă. Acum, asta presupune să dau din resursele mele, resurse care sunt mai limitate decât înainte. Și deși înainte era normalul meu, acum s-ar putea să-mi dau seama că mă costă prea tare și cred că e important să ne oprim puțin și să vedem dacă lucrurile pe care le facem justifică energia pe care noi o investim. Un al treilea lucru este limitarea a ceea ce dau spre alții, atunci când nivelul meu de energie este pe 0 sau este destul de scăzut. Dacă înainte erai genul de om care investea foarte mult în ceilalți, pentru că asta face un lider, nu? Sau dădeai cu ușurință din resursele tale, din timpul tău, s-ar putea ca în timp de pandemie, ca în perioada asta dificilă, să nu mai fie atât de ușor, pentru că resursele sunt mai limitate, pentru că consumul tău este diferit. Și atunci, ce vreau eu să spun e că e în regulă să limitezi ce trimiți către alții, cel puțin temporar, pentru că n-ai cum să dai lucruri bune spre alții dacă tu nu ești bine. Un ultim lucru este să fim flexibili atât cu așteptările pe care le avem față de noi, cât și cu așteptările pe care le avem de la ceilalți. Uneori putem și trebuie să țintim spre performanță. Pentru că asta faci când ești tânăr, nu? Ești student, dai tot ce ai mai bun și îți setezi un cel și faci tot ce trebuie să ajungi acolo. Numai că alteori prețul plătit ca să ajung la țelul pus este prea mare. Și cred că asta e o perioadă bună în care să cântărim foarte bine spre ce țintim și dacă se justifică eforturile noastre. Cred că e o perioadă în care trebuie să verificăm cumva parametrii în care trăim și să punem în balanță costuri versus beneficii. Să vedem dacă se mai justifică eforturile noastre și în felul acesta o să ne fie puțin mai bine. Deși nu e ușor și dacă nu ești obișnuit să pui limite, începând de la lucrurile mici până la lucrurile mai mari, la început poate să fie foarte inconfortabil, dar este foarte sănătos. Așa că îndrăznește să pui limite și o să-ți fie mai bine. Cam asta e ceea ce am avut eu de spus. Anda?
Ionuț, cum facem? Luăm acum niște întrebări pentru Adela sau după ce termin și eu pentru amândouă?
După ce termin și tu, dacă poți să mai rămâi, dacă nu, sigur Adela va rămâne puțin o întrebare, două. Deci, Anda, continuă tu și apoi așteptăm întrebările pentru Adela
și da. La partea de întrebări stau și eu.
Cât bine, bine.
Ok. Nu vă las așa. Ok. Bun, dragilor. Când m-a rugat Ionuț să mă gândesc la oportunitatea asta de a fi cu voi, la început m-am gândit, ok, hai că găsesc eu 2-3 lucruri pe care să le spun. Și pe măsură ce mă gândeam din ce în ce mai mult la subiectul ăsta, îmi dădeam seama că sunt multe lucruri pe care aș vrea să le spun. Multe dintre ele, sincer să fiu, care ies și din experiența mea zilele astea, pentru că în cele din urmă focusul în seara asta este pentru noi ca și lideri și pentru voi ca liderii de mâine, dar nu neapărat în relație cu alții și cum îi conducem pe alții, dar și cum ne conducem pe noi și cum gestionăm noi, cum navigăm noi toată perioada asta un pic mai grea. Și cred că am ales din multitudinea de idei care îmi veneau în minte, am ales să mă concentrez pe a vă încuraja a vă gândi la de-ceul vostru. Întrebarea asta de ce, atunci când le punem oamenilor, în general este percepută ca fiind o întrebare un pic agresivă. Da? Dacă vii și vezi că ți-a căzut copilul pe jos sau și la lucru sau la școală ți zice profesor, ok, de ce ai făcut lucrarea asta așa sau de ce ai ales subiectul ăsta? Prima noastră tendință este să ne dăm un pic în spate, pentru că de ce ăla ne simțim un pic puși la colț. Dar eu cred că este foarte, foarte valoros ca noi să ne împrietenim cu întrebarea asta de ce. Asta mi se pare că dacă e o întrebare care m-a ajutat pe mine în viață cel mai mult, este întrebarea de ce. Și aici aș vrea să o aplicăm cu privire la viața noastră, aș vrea să o aplicăm la emoțiile noastre, la stilul nostru în care funcționăm și gândim și luăm decizii și la stilul nostru în care ne raportăm în relații. Și în toate astea 3 lucruri să le filtrăm prin întrebarea de ce. Da? Și aici aș vrea să vorbim un pic în primul rând despre cum ne raportăm la emoțiile noastre. În general, noi în România nu avem așa o relație foarte bună cu emoțiile. Avem o relație de asta, love-hate, adică ori ești emoțional și ești condus de inimă și în funcție de cu cine vorbești ești un om minunat, ori vai, ești emoțional și trebuie să fii rațional dacă vorbești cu altcineva. Dar realitatea este că emoțiile noastre sunt parte din noi și întotdeauna ele au un motiv pentru care există, ele vin cu un mesaj. Și atunci ce aș vrea să vă încurajez este să stați un pic atunci când vă simțiți voi emoțiile voastre în perioada asta. Și asta, apropo, ăsta e primul lucru pe care vi l-aș spune, să vi le simțiți emoțiile, să nu fugiți de ele, să nu credeți că atunci când simt ceva neplăcut, primul lucru pe care trebuie să-l fac este să ricoșez din emoția aia. Deci mă îndrept, simt durere aici și apoi ricoșez, mă duc către o altă activitate care să-mi distragă atenția. Pentru că emoțiile astea nesimțite pe care eu le bag undeva înăuntru și nu vreau să le aud, nu vreau să le simt și pun peste ele tot felul de painkillers, tot felul de chestii care să-mi ia durerea, să-mi ia disconfortul, începând de la mâncare până la muncă, până la alcool, droguri și chestii din ce în ce mai, senzații din ce în ce mai tari. Lucrurile astea care stau între mine și emoțiile mele nu sunt niciodată sănătoase. Chiar dacă în sine pot să fie foarte validante și să pară benefice, da? Și aici vreau să zic că pentru noi care suntem lideri, munca poate să fie un asemenea lucru. Poate să fie performanța, poate să fie un lucru pe care noi să-l folosim ca să nu ne simțim emoțiile. Vă rog să nu faceți asta. Și atunci ce v-aș încuraja eu când vine vorba de emoțiile voastre este să stați întâi și să le simțiți și să vedeți, dar ce simt eu acum? Faceți un pic de liniște în locul vostru, în jurul vostru. Vă băgați și în baie dacă aveți nevoie. Dacă stați în cămin și sunteți 6 în cameră sau dacă stați în chirie și aveți o grămadă de oameni în jur, nu contează. Te bagi în baie, îți găsești un colț și stai așa un pic și te gândești, ok, ce simt? Dacă nu vă e clar ce simțiți, printați-vă de pe internet de oriunde o listă de emoții, pentru că dacă nu le putem numi noi, s-ar putea să le recunoaștem când le vedem într-o listă. Da? Și hai să începem să le numim. Și să zic, ok, mă simt anxios, mă simt stresat. Și după aceea punem întrebarea magică. Dar de ce? De ce mi-e frică mie de lucrul ăsta? Ok, sunt anxios că dacă îmi pierd locul de muncă sau sunt anxios că dacă ai mei se îmbolnăvesc. Hai să văd, de ce simt eu chestia asta? De ce dintre toate temerile tocmai asta s-a lipit de mine? Și de ce când am temerea asta mă blochez și nu pot să merg mai departe? Da, deci ne împrietenim cu întrebarea asta de ce și mergem pe firul emoțiilor noastre că ea ne slujește. Și fiind noi cu noi, nu trebuie să ne fie frică de întrebarea asta, că noi suntem de partea noastră, nu? Sau cel puțin așa ar trebui să fie. Nu ne ia nimeni de urechi dacă noi nu ne luăm. Și înainte să decidem dacă ce simțim e bine sau nu, sau dacă am făcut bine sau nu, hai să ne dăm timp să ne dăm seama ce e lucrul ăla. Da? Bun. Cel de-al doilea lucru la care vreau să vă încurajez este să vă puneți întrebarea de ce funcționez eu așa cum funcționez. Și aici mă refer nu neapărat la emoțiile care funcționează practic ca un fel de motor, sunt practic motorina aia pe care noi o băgăm în rezervor ca să funcționăm pe ea, dar mai degrabă care sunt tiparele mele viață. Și aici uitați-vă și voi, uitați-vă la cum iau eu decizii. Păi s-ar putea să iau decizii ori într-un ritm agonizant de lent, pentru că mi-e foarte frică și pentru că riscul nu e prietenul meu, ori să iau decizii foarte rapid. Ori tind să iau decizii echilibrat. Ori tind să iau decizii în funcție de cum le iau ceilalți, ori tind să iau decizii invers față de cum le iau ceilalți. Deci odată să vedem de ce iau eu decizii cum iau. De ce mă raportez eu, să zicem, la muncă cum mă raportez, de ce mă raportez la sănătatea mea cum mă raportez. Înainte să ne dăm cu parul și să zicem, băi, trebuie să lași KFC-ul și să ieși la alergat. Astea toată lumea ni le bagă pe gât. Alții, nu noi. Noi nu avem nevoie de asta. Dar înainte să sărim cu chestia asta, hai să stau un pic cu mine și să văd, dar totuși de ce am mâncat eu? Că am zis că nu mai mănânc KFC săptămâna asta și uite că deja e a 3-a zi în care mănânc și doar miercuri. Hai să vedem, de ce fac eu chestia asta? De ce mi-a venit mie, deși zisesem că nu, de ce mi-a venit mie? Păi uite că mi-am dat seama că am avut o zi nasoală și parcă KFC-ul ăla e singurul lucru bun pe ziua de azi. Ok, dar stai puțin că deja se întâmplă de multe săptămâni chestia asta și stai puțin că s-ar putea ca eu să am tiparul ăsta în care viața mea de fapt nu prea îmi place sau ceva nu merge foarte bine sau nu mă simt apreciat la muncă sau de prieteni sau de familie sau am problemele astea și singura mea bucurie și rază de speranță e KFC-ul ăla amărât. Și după aia eu mi-au bâta și îmi dau cu ea în cap că de ce nu mănânc, de ce n-am băgat salată în loc de KFC. Da? Hai să vedem de ce. De ce mă duc eu către KFC când eu am zis duminică că de luni începem să mâncăm sănătos? Înainte să luăm decizii, înainte să ne dăm cu bâta în cap, hai să vedem, de ce? Să fim curioși noi cu privire la noi înșine. Și apoi, ultimul lucru pe care vreau să-l spun este să ne punem tot timpul întrebarea de ce funcționez eu în relații așa cum funcționez. Pentru că de cele mai multe ori noi ne dăm niște răspunsuri superficiale și răspunsurile astea sunt mai degrabă astea superficiale sunt de natura de a ne liniști. Scopul lor este să ne liniștească pe noi și să nu mai punem atâtea întrebări. Și atunci ce ne face creierul nostru când zicem, da uite, deja nici ea nu mai vorbește cu mine sau nici cutărica nu mă place sau am probleme, mă cert cu toată lumea. Pot să zic, sunt toți duși cu capul și uneori se întâmplă că oamenii au zile grele zilele astea și toți suntem mai cu capsa pusă, dar pot să zic și că, poate nu mă comport eu ok cu ei. Poate e ceva din comportamentul meu care nu le pică bine oamenilor și eu nu-mi dau seama. Și înainte să mă agit, înainte să mă pedepsesc pentru asta, înainte să mă panichez că vai de capul meu ce-o fi, hai să văd de ce. Dar de ce? De ce oamenii reacționează la mine cum reacționează și de ce simt eu să dau în relații ceea ce simt să dau. Și aici mă întorc și la ce zicea Adela mai devreme, referitor la limite. Uneori avem limite prea ferme și uneori avem limite prea relaxate în relații. Uneori eu sunt aia care toată lumea știe că zic, băi, nu se poate, sunt aia de care tuturor le e frică, sau uneori sunt aia de care toată lumea trage că toți știu că eu o să zic da pentru că nu pot să spun nu. Bun, hai să ne dăm seama care sunt tiparele noastre și hai să vedem care e DC-ul. De ce funcționez eu așa cum funcționez în relații? De ce ajung oamenii tot timpul să se depărteze de mine? Sau de ce ajung oamenii tot timpul să-mi ceară lucruri și să vină cu toate nevoile lor către mine? De ce nu pot să spun nu? De ce mă prinde 3 noaptea vorbind la telefon cu o persoană când eu a doua zi am examen și al 3-lea examen pe care îl pic pentru că am făcut același lucru? Nu zic, până să ne dăm seama dacă e bine sau nu ce facem, hai să vedem DC-ul nostru, pentru că ăla e foarte important. Da? Deci, am zis, ne concentrăm pe DC-urile noastre, pe de ce simțim ce simțim, pe de ce funcționăm cum funcționăm în viață, de ce luăm deciziile pe care le luăm, de ce ne raportăm la muncă, cum ne raportăm, de ce nu reușim să ne implementăm planurile pe care tot noi ni le facem și după aia și de ce tot noi ne certăm și în cele din urmă de ce funcționez eu în relații așa cum funcționez, de ce văd tiparul ăsta dacă mă uit și văd că în general oamenii se raportează la mine într-un fel asemănător și după aceea hai să văd ce fac cu el. Da? Aș putea să continui. Eu nu știe că eu n-am nevoie de mult ca să vorbesc și 2 ore. Dar aș vrea să mă opresc aici. Vă las cu ideea asta. Hai să ne punem întrebarea de ce. Înainte să ne sărim în cap, înainte să tragem concluzia, hai să fim curioși. Dar de ce funcționez eu cum funcționez? Și gata. Acum puteți să puneți întrebări sau eu nu spre ea tu.
Bun, dacă aveți întrebări acum le așteptăm pentru Anda și pentru Adela. Le puteți trimite prin chat către mine, iar eu le voi pune întrebarea. Da? Deci o întrebare, 2, puteți să le scrieți. Uite o întrebare. Cum facem să avem răbdare cu noi? Să ne convingem că lucrurile bune iau timp?
Adela?
Tușe, ca să zic
E o
așa.
întrebare în care Adela... Nu, glumesc.
În primul rând, cred că conștientizând că doar având răbdare cu noi, o să putem să ne dăm seama care sunt nevoile noastre reale. Și având răbdare cu noi, o să putem să funcționăm mai bine. Iar odată ce avem răbdare cu noi, asta se va răsfrânge și în exterior, în relațiile noastre, în interacțiunile cu ceilalți. Este cu bătaie lungă și dacă astăzi nu am răbdare deloc cu mine, cred că e foarte important să nu plec de la a nu avea răbdare la a avea o răbdare divină. E foarte important să ne propunem pași mici. De la 0, hai să-mi propun să ajung la 0,2 la început. Și odată ce am ajuns la 0,2, poate o să-mi fie mai ușor să ajung la 1. Deci, pași mici, în lucruri mici, ne propunem pași făcubili.
Adela, tot o întrebare pentru tine și după aia continuăm și cu tine, dar este cum ai vorbit de limite, pentru că ajută limitele și nu-ți dai mai ales pe social media. Tu ai de exemplu ăla cu social media în care te duci, dai energie și deja primești răspuns și te duci pe un topogan unde care duce către mai multă descurajare. Bun, și întrebarea este cum poți fi ferm în privința limitelor deja impuse, să continui să te ții de ele fără să te simți vinovat?
Adică îți propui o limită și cum poți să o ții în continuare?
Da, deci întrebarea este cum poți fi ferm în privința limitelor deja impuse. Deci deja și-a impus niște limite persoana care a pus întrebarea și vrei să continui să te ții de ele fără să te simți cumva vinovat.
Limitele, dacă nu am fost învățat să punem limite, la început va veni și un sentiment de vinovăție. Pentru că e ceva ce n-am mai făcut, e ceva ce nu am învățat. Cred că
este vinovăția față de cei din jur, te-a clarificat.
Okay.
Deci cumva îi respingi sau zici, bă, nu pot și...
Este un sentiment de disconfort pe care o să-l simțim cel puțin la început, numai că dacă vrem să putem să existăm pe termen lung în relație cu alți oameni, e important să ne dăm seama cât putem să dăm într-un anumit moment. Pentru că dacă voi da acum foarte mult, deși eu am puțin, mâine nu voi mai putea da deloc. Dar în schimb, dacă dau azi puțin, voi avea și mâine puțin și poi mâine puțin și voi putea să fiu acolo. Și cred că e foarte important, ca să scadă vinovăția asta, e foarte important să le clarificăm celorlalți. It's not about you. Nu e că nu-mi place să fiu aici, ci atât pot să dau în momentul ăsta. Și odată cu clarificarea, cred că scade și vinovăția.
Anda, ai vorbit despre să ne punem DC-ul și să mergem, cumva să ne creăm un spațiu în viața de zi cu zi și să ne întrebăm de ce mă simt așa, de ce am trăit la astea, de ce îmi găsesc semnificație în muncă. Și întrebarea este în felul următor: dacă DC-ul acesta mă afundă și mai mult în a mă persecuta, ce să fac? Și prin persecuta să se învinovățească pentru ceea ce este, pentru ceea ce face. Deci, cumva prin DC-ul ăsta ea sau el.
Unde se duce.
Da.
Cred că dacă DC-ul te duce într-un loc în care te afunzi, înseamnă că poate nu l-ai răspuns foarte bine. Și atunci eu aș zice, este foarte important ca la răspunsul de la DC să fim deciși că oricare o să fie răspunsul ăla, noi o să-l abordăm așa cu blândețe. Și aici, uite, îmi place foarte, foarte mult întrebarea asta, că mi se pare că oamenii în general au tendința să zică, păi, ok, de ce nu muncesc eu mai tare la școală? De ce nu învăț mai mult? Și răspunsul lor la de ce s-ar putea să fie pentru că sunt leneși. Pentru mine ăsta este un răspuns inacceptabil. Pentru că, ok, sunt leneși, este ceea ce sunt și ce fac cu asta? Băi, mă opresc. Nu. Trebuie să văd, ok, hai să văd de ce sunt eu demotivat. Hai să mergem, de ce sunt leneși? De unde am prins eu ideea că e mai bine în viață să nu muncesc, chiar dacă am minusuri, decât să muncesc și să mă bucur de rezultatele mele. Și s-ar putea să, mergând pe fiș, să-mi aduc eu aminte că, uite, la un moment dat în copilărie mi s-a zis, nu te mai chinui la școală că tu tot prost rămâi. Deci uneori, de cele mai multe ori când ne blocăm, sunt pur și simplu niște eșecuri ale noastre, care sunt fie eșecuri, fie au fost interpretate ca eșecuri, care ne spun, tu nu poți. Înțelegi? Și atunci eu nu accept tu nu poți-ul ăla, pentru că eu nu cred că noi nu putem. Cred că atunci, că poate nu putem singuri, da, asta sunt de acord. Și poate nu putem lucruri mărețe de azi pe mâine și cu asta sunt de acord. Dar cred că trebuie să ajungem și să vedem, ok, și cu asta ce pot să fac și cu asta ce pot să fac. Că fiecare motiv mare care mă blochează pe mine poate să fie descompus în chestii mai mici pe care le pot aborda una câte una.
Deci cumva chiar dacă DC-ul te duce într-o stare de asta, să faci pași mai mici și să nu te lași cumva dărâmat.
Da, și să eviți etichetele astea de genul leneș, rău, prost și așa mai departe, că ele ne blochează, nu ne ajută la nimic.
Da, am o veste bună și o veste proastă. Vestea bună este, sau vestea proastă pentru oameni este că nu putem să stăm foarte mult la întâlnirea asta. Tot vin întrebările, o să mai răspund la una, pentru că sunt și ceilalți invitați și este legat de doliu. Da. Știu că tu ai scris o carte pe doliu și cineva întreabă, uite, ce facem când ai vorbit de blocaj emoțional, ce facem când simțim că suntem într-un blocaj emoțional? Tatăl meu a trecut în veșnicie de curând și am avut un fel de negare intrinsecă, mama a plâns mult, dar eu nu am putut plânge și chiar mă simt vinovată uneori.
Este normal genul ăsta de blocaj la început, mai ales dacă chestia asta reprezintă o pierdere mare. Nu mă panichez, până la urmă perioada de doliu poate să arate ca un talmeș-balmeș, poate să arate oricum. Tot ce aș zice este să nu faci tu lucruri care să te ajute să eviți durerea asta și dacă nu plângi, simte durerea și dacă nu se exprimă ea prin plâns. Și doi la mână, dacă după 6 luni de zile sau un an de zile tot nu s-a schimbat nimic și tu tot mai plângi și ești stane de piatră, atunci s-ar putea să putem vorbi despre un blocaj. Dar dacă s-a întâmplat de curând, încă suntem șocați și atunci e normal.
Da, oricum tu ai scris o carte pe acest subiect, cum se numește, Prin doliu sau...
Drum prin doliu.
Drum prin doliu, da. Deci poți căuta cartea Drum prin doliu, o găsești la multe librării online. Și ultima întrebare pentru Adela, legat de vinovăție. Cum putem scăpa de acest sentiment care cumva ne împiedică să înaintăm?
Aș zice că am nevoie de mai multe informații.
Da.
Nu putem.
Am foarte puțin aici și nu prea am putut să operez.
Hai să vedem, dacă ne poți spune mai multe, dacă nu, în ce sens vinovăție sau în ce context, nu? Ce ai vrea?
Da, e nevoie de puțin context.
Da. Mă bag și eu un pic aici peste
Da, bagă-te, da, sigur.
Că, într-adevăr, cred că contează mult contextul și cred că sunt lucruri pentru care suntem în mod real vinovați și atunci putem. Dar realitatea e că de multe ori ne simțim vinovați pentru chestii pentru care nu avem ce face și atunci tot ce trebuie să facem este să ne dăm seama că e o vinovăție falsă și asta e, mă simt vinovat, nu pot să o opresc, dar nici nu înseamnă că o cred. Adică cred că uneori ne temem un pic prea tare de ceea ce simțim și credem că soluția la emoția aia este să o oprim. Uneori soluția e să o simțim, să o ținem cu noi acolo și să o înțelegem că e, dar să nu o credem neapărat. Scuză-mă, Adela, m-am băgat peste tine.
Nu, e perfect, e perfect.
Da, n-am primit clarificare. Eu știu că oamenii își mai doresc să mai răspundem la întrebări. Ne oprim aici. Anda, Adela, mulțumim foarte mult. Am o singură întrebare pentru voi. Uite, noi nu avem ocazia sau oamenii nu au ocazia să meargă la un terapeut să discute astfel de lucruri care sunt întrebări, uite ce imagină pe oameni și spun, da, mă duc eu la terapeut, dar totuși, care ar fi rolul unei persoane apropiate, unui mentor în a pune întrebările astea? Cât de important este să ai pe cineva aproape, un mentor în această perioadă?
Eu aș zice că e esențial. Relațiile, ca să existe vindecare și ca să existe sănătate, e nevoie de relații. Iar o relație autentică cu un mentor, aș spune că are niște beneficii uriașe. Foarte multe lucruri se vindecă și se rezolvă în cadrul relațiilor sănătoase. Și da, dacă dai peste niște blocaje foarte, foarte mari și vezi că revii din nou și din nou, iată, se tot învârte problema asta în viața ta, e cazul să cauți un terapeut, dar înainte de terapeut, da, o relație autentică și special cu un mentor care bănuiesc că are maturitate este foarte, foarte benefică.
Mulțumim mult, mulțumim Adela, haideți să ne aplaudăm puțin pe Adela și pe Andra, mulțumim tare mult.
Ne-am bucurat să fim cu voi.
Și vă așteptăm și cu altă ocazie. Mulțumim tare mult, Anda. Pentru că Anda și cu Adela au vorbit despre importanța unui mentor, vreau să vă spun că noi la Liderii de Mâine avem un program de coaching prin care voi puteți să aveți un coach care să vă ajute să vă dezvoltați din punct de vedere profesional, personal și spiritual. Noi ne luăm angajamentul că putem să facem pro bono primele 3 întâlniri și se pot face și pe Zoom, deci chiar dacă nu sunteți din București, se pot face și pe Zoom. Vă dau link-ul aici, în chat. De fapt nu vi l-am lăsat puțin, că vi-l dau acum. Este un link în care puteți să vă înregistrați, să vă lăsați datele și un mentor, un coach care are experiență, puteți să parcurgeți această perioadă mai bine, punându-vă câte un țel în domeniul profesional, personal și spiritual. Acum vreau să-l invit pe următorul invitat, este din America, să-l găsesc puțin aici în listă. Ok. Wait a second, David. Ok. Deci următorul invitat este un bun prieten de-al meu. David, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, now I am.
Yes, now we can hear you. David is a good friend of mine. He's from Dallas, but actually he's living right now in Florida. He has huge experience with crisis. I know when we talk some other time, David told me that he felt like every year was like a COVID situation in his life. So let me share a few things about David and his business experience. Just a second. Great. Okay, so David David founded Invesco Real Estate in 1983. He was the CEO of this company between 1983 and 2015. Invesco Real Estate is in the funds management business. It manages money for large pension funds, endowment foundations, and sovereign wealth funds. It specializes in investments in real estate. Under David's direction, the firm grew into a multinational company with more than 400 employees and more than $60 billion in assets under management. So that's amazing, David. When we hear this kind of numbers, starting from 0 to 400 employees, and then to manage $400 billion in assets, that's it's beyond our imagination. So, everybody, wants a good career. Everybody wants a great family, and sometimes we think that this is happening by chance. But I invited you today to speak about how can we what can we do in this time of the second wave of pandemic to manage this crisis. So, David, you are going to speak for 20 minutes, and then we will have some questions for you.
Right.
Welcome, David.
It's a pleasure to be here. After I'm through, I may have to run.
Yes.
Just so you'll know, I've got an appointment.
Yes.
But hey, listen, it's just a pleasure being here. I love speaking to the Romanian groups that I've spoken to, and I'm just delighted and privileged to do it. And listen, I want to set some perspective here today. I am probably the least likely CEO you'll ever hear speak. My goal in life was to have an air-conditioned job. I was an average student, and the fact that I could end up with the kind of business we ended up with, and it wasn't just me, it was me and my partners, was unthinkable back then. And so there's a lot that went behind it. I don't have time to talk about today, but I did say at one point, I felt like every year was COVID, because every year there was a threat of some kind, and for many years, one of those threats, if they'd come true, I would have been, shining shoes down at the train station. There was a very thin line between failure and success back in the day. But anyway, I think it's a good idea. We are in difficult times now, unprecedented in my lifetime. But I think it's good to take just a second and set perspective here, and then talk about a solution. Okay, here's the perspective that I came up with. Okay, I was not blessed, middle income, lower income family. Mom died when I was 9. I grew up on a cot, sleeping on a cot in my granddad's dining room. So it was, life didn't seem fair then, although I was having a great time. But here's what really came to mind. I didn't suffer through high school and college. I was able to have a good time and didn't have it as good as I may have wanted to. But here's what I finally realized, though, is that the world is a broken place. It's always been broken. It always will be broken. It has definitely not been designed to meet our needs. And if we think it has, we're going to be deeply disappointed over and over and over again. I was blessed to marry a woman 42 years ago who had a grandmother we called Mimi. She lived to be 100, Mimi did. She's from Florida down here. That's how I ended up with a house in Florida, by the way. I begged to go to the mountains, and Candy said no. Let me just be clear about that. So here we are, and Mimi was just unbelievable. She was born in 1910. She saw more things than we can define. She saw World War I came along. She saw 22 million, 25 million people die. She went through the Spanish flu. As you all know, 50 million people died. She had the Great Depression. She owned a beauty parlor and just about went bankrupt every day during the Great Depression. Her husband turned to alcohol. Her husband, unfortunately and very sadly, committed suicide during this time and left her with 2 kids. Then here came World War II. 50 million people died. And on from that point on, forget Vietnam and all the other things that happened. And here's what's amazing about Mimi. She never seemed to lose her joy. She was always happy. Candy grew up in a military family, so they were always flying her around to where they lived so they could spend time with her. She just never gave up and just had such a great character that came from that. I've not been called to live through that kind of perspective. You know, we've been really blessed here. I'm not sure this blessing is going to go on forever, but it helps me to look back and see the world. And the world before all that was tough, very tough, all those years. So for me, it played out. I'm sitting on my kitchen counter in 1983, lamenting, should I really try to start this business that I had an idea around? It was managing other people's money around the world. That's where there was trillions of dollars of money that needed to be managed. And I was scared to death because I had a good job. Mimi happened to be in town that day. She was sitting at our small wooden kitchen table, and she looks up at me from that counter and she goes, David, will you get off that counter and just go start the business? In 30 years from now, it won't make a bit of difference. That's what started my business. I thought, with everything that woman knows, all she's lived and seen, what a great perspective. So I did. I jumped off the counter. That next Monday, I got my little purple Opal and I drove downtown Dallas. If you hear some screaming, that's my granddaughter singing as she's running through the house. I've got the barbarians at the gate, so be ready for them. And it made a big she said it wouldn't make a big difference in 30 years. Well, it made a huge difference because it happened to turn out. But every year, you know, it seemed like, again, keeping perspective, every year it was a struggle. Every year there was something threatening to put us out of business. We had many recessions. The GFC, global financial crisis in 2008 was amazing. I lost half my wealth and the business really teetered. The tech recession, the tech bubble and 9/11, none of those were fun either. So it was tough. And, you know, it just kind of never ends. But here's the deal. Can y'all hear her singing?
Yes, we love her singing, David. Anyway, but relax, do it.
I hope that you're hearing me and not her singing.
We are hearing you well. So go ahead.
My daughter sang like this every day, and when she left for college, it was the saddest moment in my life because I missed her singing through the house, and now my granddaughter does it. But anyway, here's the key I found, and I'll just tell you how it worked out in my life. The key to my centeredness, and that's really what you need, is to have a sense of identity, you know, a sense of self, who you are. I call it a personal centeredness. I call it living for something bigger than me. I mean, who am I? You know, I need to have a purpose. Purposes are exceedingly important for me. And so for me, it happened. I drove that purple Opal downtown and started my business, and I was at it for about 2 years. We had one client. I thought we will never get another client. And I'm sitting in Houston, Texas, having dinner with a broker and all his staff. And at the end of dinner, he stared at me and he says, David, you know something that's true? And I said, no. What are you talking about, Al? He says, you don't have a chance of surviving in your business. This is a joke. You'll never get another client. Who are you to try to compete with Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and all these other firms that were deeply ensconced in the business? And I sat there and I stared at him and I realized, he's right. I don't have a chance. Why didn't I think about this harder? And I got up and I walked back to my hotel room after dinner. And I sat at this little wooden desk and I made a list. I wish I'd kept it, but I filled out that sheet of paper, every single line, all the way to the bottom with my weaknesses, why I was not capable of making this business go. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't have a sales ability that was necessary. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have a company behind me like Goldman Sachs. It just went on and on. And I stared at that sheet of paper. And I remember looking at the phone thinking, maybe I can get my old job back. It had been 2 years. I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I got on the floor with that sheet of paper, literally on this dirty floor. And I asked my God if he would take this from me and that if he would find me another job. I don't care what it was. I just wanted another job. And I said, if you won't find me another job, you be CEO of this and I'll be the doorman or whatever role you want me to play. I'm done being CEO. I don't own this anymore. It's yours. And I'm telling you, if in my life, that was a miracle because I'm a pretty self-reliant person. And I stood up and it was like someone lifted 1,000 pounds off my shoulders. And what's really funny is creativity returned. I didn't care anymore about not impressing my boss. I wanted to succeed, but I just quit worrying about anything like that. I just gave it away. I gave up. And there developed out of that my sense of centeredness. You know, from then on, it became a deep drive to serve others. Our goal, we wrote down 2 values. It was to serve our clients who had very important money that was going to support retirees for the rest of their lives. So our true, authentic value was let's help these investment people manage these trillions of dollars. Let's be servants for them and do everything we can to produce returns for them and make them look smart. And the second value that I had, we all had, was each other. It was us. It was how can I help our folks become successful and realize their dreams and be treated with respect and love it here. And so we became kind of an employer of choice. We had a great culture that came from this healthy environment. And those became my purpose. You know, if it wasn't for me achieving my centeredness I just talked about, I couldn't have made it. There's no way. And I would challenge you all to find your purpose if you haven't already, and most of you probably have. But to find that, and don't fall prey to the 2 deadly sins that everybody does. I did for a while too. And one is judging yourself by how much money you have, what's your position in life, your status and all that. Forget it. My father-in-law was a Navy pilot. He loved to fly. Then he became a preacher. He loved to preach, and he was a rich man. Never had any money, but he's the happiest guy I've ever known. School teachers, I know so many, they make no money, but they thrive. They don't judge themselves by who they are, power, money, and those things. And here's a bigger one. Don't fall prey to the comparison game, okay? There's always a bigger, faster gun. There's always people more successful. You've got to stop that. You're a unique person with unique gifts that you've been given. Be you. No one else can be you. And if you can do that and be happy with that, you miss those 2 problems. That's about half, I think, of the issues that tend to drive anxiety. In the comparison game, I've seen with so many of my colleagues that have had that. So I would just say finding your purpose is a absolute anchor. It defines you. Usually it involves helping others. We've been designed to want to love others and help others. We've been designed to do something I call togetherness. Okay, you weren't designed to live alone. You want to be in teams. You want to join something and do something that's worthy and worthwhile. It has intrinsic value to it. So most people can't isolate themselves and remain happy at all. So yeah, so that's, for me, it was that pillar. We call it the personal centeredness pillar. We actually had 2 others that helped us be successful at our company. But that was the first one. Without that pillar, nothing else could happen, you know. So that'd be my advice, just finding your personal centeredness, and more important than ever today with this negativity we're in. But remember, go back and get your perspective. This is nothing compared to what our ancestors faced. Honestly, it's tough, you know. We've seen some real bad things happen, but we've seen a lot worse, and we will live through them. So It sure helps to be centered. That's about all I have, my friend.
David, thank you so much. Dacă aveți întrebări pentru David legat de cum a trecut el până anumite crize sau dacă aveți o întrebare pentru el, în acest moment sunt gata să le primesc, le puteți scrie în chat. Deja am primit întrebările. Le scrieți, puteți să scrieți și în limba română, eu le voi întreba. So David, I started to receive questions from the audience. So you said to get your center right. So what's inside your center? What do your life it's based on what helps you stay firm when the winds and winter and the rain it's all over your life?
Okay, for me, it is truly about living for something bigger than myself.
What is that?
For me, it's God. And I'll tell you, I'm not trying to proselytize anybody here, but for me, it's Jesus Christ. It's my relationship with God. Others that I know that have been successful have other priorities, but they have to be bigger than you. They have to be something that's worthy to give your life to, because your shoulders are not broad enough to take on the issues you're going to see over the next 30 or 40 years. That's why you see so much damage in terms of alcoholism and drugs and in divorce and failure on a personal level, is not having that thing that's bigger than you are to latch onto. And for me, it was my finding out about God when I was in high school. It changed my life, from then on, and that's who I ran back to, and that became my centerness.
David, another question for you is what motivated you to keep exceeding your limits and to have success in your career?
Okay, here, let me debunk a myth.
Go ahead.
It's not the smartest companies that win. They tell you that in college, and you'll hear that in academia everywhere you go. And it's not true. What's true is how you work together in teams in a healthy way where you're allowed to have robust disagreement, constructive conflict until you find the right answers. That way you learn from each other consistently and you become smarter as an organization. So I can't tell you how many teams we compete against that all have Harvard MBAs, Stanford, brilliant people. The problem there is they usually don't communicate well, or they're too insecure to say they're wrong. What helped us win was humility around the team play. It was check your ego at the door. When you come in the room, if you sit at that table, you have an obligation to dissent, no rank in the room, and you leave as friends. I'd go in every room, every meeting we ever had, a critical meeting around winning a new client, let's say, and I always knew the answer. Well, 9 times out of 10, I was wrong. There was a better answer. So if you have a ferocious desire to succeed and are willing to step through the processes of working together, having what we call war rooms, you will become a smarter organization and more successful. Plus, that breeds a great culture you get to be known for.
But David, what about a student who is right now a college student? He's in college. He's not in a war room. He's not in a company, and he sees only his limits. Like you were in that hotel room, and he says, maybe I don't have enough experience. I'm not good at that. What's your advice for them to push against those limits?
Well, my advice is to first tell you that's exactly who I am and who I was. I didn't even try to interview on campus. I was a B student. Who wants to interview a B student? I was average intelligence in the classroom. No one would have given me a chance. But I realized this, that anything's possible if you can get along with people and learn to work together to accomplish goals that are bigger than you are. And so I would not put a limit on yourself. You have gifts you don't even know yet until you're out in the marketplace and you're trying to push forward and you're working with others. I would say don't do it alone. Don't get down on yourself, but don't do it alone. You find something you have a heart for and a passion for, and you work and you do everything you can to work in teams to compete against the bigger, more smarter, companies or people.
Okay, one or two questions, please. So please send the questions to me. David, I asked the women that spoke earlier, and I asked them about the role of a mentor at this stage in life. So what's your advice for having a mentor while they are in college? Because we have a mentoring program where we want to help students grow in these three aspects: professional, personal, and spiritually. So spiritual. So what's your advice for having a mentor?
My advice is it's invaluable. If you can find mentors, obviously you have to find a balanced, good mentor, someone you respect and has the qualities that you want to emulate. But I would latch on to that mentor and I would ask every possible question you can possibly ask. And then I wouldn't just have one mentor if I could find more than one. The smartest people I know, I've made it a hobby for 20 years now to mentor young folks. It's just my way of giving back. And there's some just sit there and kind of listen and don't know what to say really, but there's others that ask all these great questions. And they keep coming back and they keep interviewing and asking and learning. It's invaluable to learn from others. And my goal as a mentor is to help them avoid so many of the mistakes that I made, because I made so many mistakes. That seems to be the only way I know how to learn, is screwing up. So by telling them these things, I feel like I'm helping them maybe avoid some of those mistakes. So it's incredibly invaluable to have a mentor.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for being with us today. Unfortunately, we cannot take questions anymore. We will see you some other time, David, hopefully in Romania. You can ask if nu am înțeles de Elia ce întrebare poți să pui în limba română. So we receive more questions. We'll see you some other time. Bye, David. Have a nice day.
All right. Thank you. It's great to meet you all and have fun and see you later.
Great. Bye, David. Următorul nostru invitat este John Urban, este tot din Dallas, are și el o carieră de succes, a ajuns să fie în cea mai mare poziție, cea mai înaltă poziție la una dintre cele mai mari bănci din lume, instituții financiare, Goldman Sachs. So, John, welcome. It's good to see you, good to have you. I was mentioned earlier that you have a great leadership experience. You became a partner at Goldman Sachs, which is one of the highest positions, if not the highest position someone can have to that great financial institution. So, John, how many kids do you have? 8, 9, or 10?
We have 10.
10 kids. So he has 10 kids. He has a beautiful wife. He has a great family. And he had a great career. He did well financially. So, John, I am curious, what's the thing behind this? But before we speak to John, I just want to let you know that you can ask, have questions with John. If you have questions, please send those questions to me, and I will ask John. Also, I want to remind you that we have our mentoring program. He's in the chat. Take a moment, apply, and a mentor will get in touch with you. So, John, welcome to the first event virtually in Romania. It's good to have you.
Glad to be here. And I have a heart for Romania. I'm Polish and Lithuanian myself, so close enough geographically. So those are my roots, and I'm appreciative of the work that you're doing there, and outreach that you have.
Wow, thank you. So, John, have you been to this part of the world?
I have not. Unfortunately, I'm not a very good traveler. So the farthest over there I've been to London and Paris, but that's about as far away from the United States as I've been.
Yeah, so 2 more hours and you are here in Romania. So John, let's go back to you and your life experience. You have a great family. You had a great career. You did well financially. So everybody kind of wants that in their life. So my question is, how did you start? How was your childhood? Did you had someone in your life that kind of I don't know, was there for you? You know, everything was nice when you started your life. So tell me more. Let's start with your childhood and tell me more. How was it?
Sure. So it was interesting listening to David. I listened to his presentation. My dad died when I was 3, and my mom, she was raised in an orphanage herself, and the happiest day of her life was when she married my father. And then when he died, after 3 years after I was born, that put her into, I'd say, a depression that has lasted pretty much the rest of her life. So I was raised by a depressed single mother. She never remarried, and in fact, she only worked for a few years after my dad died, because I think it was very difficult for her to be in the workplace. And so we were raised on government support, Social Security in the United States. And so I never look back on that time and cry or think, wow, I wish I had it differently, because for me, and I figured this out later, but that God was really my father, and he was always pointing me in the right direction. I did have childhood friends that their fathers would maybe invite me over to play games or take me to different places, but there wasn't a single father figure in my life, including relatives. There was really no one to provide guidance and support for me. So I was pretty much on my own. And the one thing that I kind of figured out on my own was that if I want things, I'm going to have to earn money to pay for those things, and that if I want to move on from, so we lived in Chicago in I'd call it a poor neighborhood. It wasn't bad. There were gangs and things, but it wasn't that bad. But we were poor, and I remember there was a neighborhood, a suburb that was about a 30-minute bike ride away. And I would ride my bike there, and it had beautiful homes on Lake Michigan, and it was a kind of a wealthy suburb. And I thought, how do I get there? How do I get from where I am, and how do I get there? And it became obvious, this is even at a very young age, that I'm gonna have to earn a living, and I'm gonna have to focus on my education to get out of there. So I did things like I delivered groceries, I shoveled snow, I had a paper route. We used to have, in the old days, there were actual physical newspapers that were made of paper, and you used to have to deliver them to people. So I did that, and I earned money to buy things for myself, whether it was a nice coat or a nice pair of shoes or The good news was people weren't as focused on things as they are today. So if you had a pair of Converse canvas gym shoes, you were good. So I just had to make sure I could get those. You didn't have to have 12 pairs of, this is as a guy, remind you, but you didn't have to have 12 pairs of gym shoes or 30 pairs of gym shoes. So you could get by, but I had to buy those things for myself. And then I was really focused on my grades. I thought that was the area that I could excel. I was okay at sports, not outstanding, but I figured out that the education was going to be the most important thing, that was going to be the bridge to something better.
So you had a tough childhood. You were raised by your mom in a poor neighborhood in Chicago, and you worked to have some money, and also you understood that in order to get a nice house or to be in the suburb, you need to have good grades. And I know it's this idea that today people think that grades are not important. What's your take on that?
So we heard our previous speaker talk about being a B student, and that who would want to interview a B student. So if anything, it's gotten more difficult. And so I think that's just categorically false. Employers want to see that you got good grades. And what does that tell an employer? It tells them that you were diligent, that you were focused. There's some people that grades come easy. So I have this, my life is split in two. So I became a born again Christian when I was 26. So prior to 26, I was kind of a wild heathen. At the age of 26, I met my wife and I got saved. So I have to split those two. But if I go back to my heathen wild years, I was in a fraternity. And I remember there'd be fraternity brothers that we'd have a huge accounting exam on a Friday morning. And there'd be other guys that they didn't have to study. They could just memorize and they would get A's by doing virtually nothing. I, on the other hand, had to study more than anyone else. And I did it because I knew that employers are going to look at your grades, and the grades tell the employer whether you had to work for them or not. It says something to the employer that you were focused and you took time. Even if other people didn't take time, you took time. And so personally, when I would look at resumes later in life, I would, if somebody's GPA was low, you would just dismiss it out of hand. And unfortunately, you just put that in a different pile. Even if somebody had very good experience and had other qualities that were worthwhile. And it's just the way it works. So the grades are definitely important. And listen, some people struggle. Then you just have to work that much harder to try and get the interview, right? Not everyone's going to get straight A's. So you can't be discouraged either if maybe you're struggling. But what you can do, which is what I did, I worked harder than the next person. I worked as hard as I needed to. I did whatever I could do to get an A in a class. And whether that was studying 3 times more than someone else or meeting with the teacher and really just trying to understand what they were looking for. But that was my focus, because I knew that that's going to be, on your transcript at some point, and it's a permanent record. And so I'm going to stay focused on that.
John, I appreciate I will always appreciate the people who are so disciplined and they have that laser focus on their grades. I wish I had that, in college. Unfortunately, I did not. But I wanted to ask you, for the students, they have a lot of distractions right now. We have these things that we're carrying around with us all the time. If it's Instagram, Facebook, or other things, or I don't know, Netflix. So we have a lot of distractions, and they have a lot of distractions. And sometimes, what's your advice? How can students stay focused on the right things, especially in this time?
Sure. So the truthful answer is we all stay focused on what we want to stay focused on. And so even with respect to games, I watch kids that they're hooked on that game. But if they have a similar focus on their studies, they're obviously capable. They're just choosing what to focus on. And it isn't as though this is a new thing. So for me, and going back to those fraternity days, particularly in college, people would play foosball. They would play billiards. We had video games. We had actual hard video, like the video games that you would play, like arcade games. And then surprisingly, people would watch soap operas, and that was a big thing. And I remember that. Okay, so way back then, 30 plus years ago for me, if the show was on at 12 noon, that was it. And it was a recorder for that program was very expensive, so most people didn't have them. So if you didn't watch that show at noon, you weren't going to be able to watch it again unless there was a rerun much later. So I would watch people with these 12 noon soap operas, and they had a 1 o'clock class, and they didn't want to miss the end of that soap opera. So they missed their class instead. I, on the other hand, left for the class. So you choose what you want to focus on. And there's a scripture that says, all things are permissible, but not all things are profitable. And so the goal is to focus on things that make a difference. Most of the things that distract us today are meaningless, worthless, and are going to amount to nothing. All the social media. I don't have social media. And I'm 57. So many men my age have a Facebook, and they look at TikTok, and they've got a Twitter. I don't have any of those things. So a lot of these things are choices. And you can choose what you want to focus on. The distractions have always been there. I'll grant that it's very difficult because that, like you said, that device, there's a lot on there, and it's right with you all the time. But this is when you have to make conscious decisions that will impact your future. So you can do it. You just have to focus.
So it's a matter of perspective. What do you want from your future?
Yes.
And so if you want something in your future, is that it's not going to happen by chance. And you understood from young age that if you want to have a future, you need to have good grades and to show that you are serious and disciplined and focused. And I have a question from you that came from someone in the audience. And the question is like this. It's a little bit longer, but
okay.
So, when having an interview with a candidate, do you believe that HR managers should stick with only looking at the candidate's grades and previous professional background, or try to get to know the candidate better by discovering her personality and to the potential benefits they might bring to the company?
Okay, it's a great question. So what do I think? I think
Yes.
It should be the latter part of that question. What happens as a practical matter? It's the former part of the question. So there, unfortunately, now they have algorithms that just look at these resumes. So it'll just cut you off if you don't have a certain GPA, or it'll cut you off if you don't have a certain work experience. But okay, So I went to school at the University of Illinois, and there's a story behind that too. I did have excellent grades, and I got into Northwestern University, which is we'll call it a top 20 university in the United States. But at the time, it was $13,000 a year to go to Northwestern, and they offered me a scholarship of $5,000 a year. So I would be $8,000 in debt per year, at least, going for 4 years. And the University of Illinois gave me a full ride scholarship to the point where they actually gave me some money. I actually collected money. So I made the decision that I didn't want to be in debt just to go to what I felt was, a somewhat better school. But because I went to University of Illinois, even though I had excellent grades, many of the firms, Goldman Sachs, that I ended up at, wouldn't even give me an interview. Merrill Lynch, no interview. Chase, no interview. I can go down the list that they just wouldn't give me an interview
because you are not in the good school in the
University of Illinois wasn't perceived as an Ivy League school. So if you didn't go to an Ivy League school, don't bother. Now, I still didn't take no for an answer, and I wrote letters. I tried to call people, kind of catch them off guard that they'd pick up their phone. I was very, very persistent, but even with my persistence, it just fell on deaf ears because the education in their mind wasn't up to par. Now, I ended up at the highest level at Goldman Sachs down the road, but I had to come in through the back door, and God allowed me an open door in the back door later in my career, and orchestrated a number of things that in hindsight, it was probably better to come in the back door, because I was able to come in as a vice president, which was a difficult title in and of itself to achieve, but I was able to come in the back door. So with respect to that question, what you have to do is whatever it takes to get yourself in front of them and be able to speak, and to be able to tell somebody, to be able to articulate why you're the right person, why they should consider you, even if maybe your grades suffered. Maybe your grades suffered because you had a family tragedy, or maybe your grades suffered because you weren't focused earlier, but then you decided, you know what, gosh, that was a mistake, and now I am going to focus, but those grades are still on your record. There are many extenuating circumstances. And so then the goal is you have to get yourself in front of that HR manager or whomever, maybe even someone that's at the company that you desire to work at, and tell your story, that maybe the resume doesn't tell the right story, but now you want to tell that story. The other way around that is to craft a very thoughtful cover letter. And the cover letter can say whatever it wants. Your grades are your grades, and you can't change those. And by the way, if anyone on the phone, if your grade point average is a 3.22,
we don't have that kind of system.
Okay, good.
Okay, so
right.
we have grades from 1 to 10.
Okay, so never ever lie about your grades. I promise you that will come back to haunt you. So that's a temptation for many people, and I've seen it hurt people in the long run. But
great. So to do whatever it takes, even though you don't have the grades, write a letter, do whatever you need to do to get in front of that HR and kind of tell your story.
Yes.
But how do you have this kind of persistence? Because sometimes our generation is called snowflakes because we are so sensitive, and it's hard for us to push back when we have we come with a little bit of resilience, or we face a problem and we are not pushing that. So how can we have that persistence like you have?
Again, I think it really comes down to a mindset. And I think that there are a lot of lies and a lot of false information that comes from social media. And I feel like it's one of the reasons why I just don't have it. And I encourage my kids not to be on it, because there's just a lot of false narrative on social media about what is important and what isn't important, and here's what you should do and here's what you shouldn't do. And again, I feel like most of it is just not true. People will say anything that they feel necessary to be popular on social media, and even present themselves in a way that is not true. But to the direct question, again, if so, I see that there are, if I scan across, it seems like there are a number of young women on the call. So
Yes.
if you're a young woman and you happen to be interested in a man that's a suitor, boy, you're going to be focused, aren't you? And you're going to do, whether it's what you're saying in a text, and you might even think about that text for 20 minutes before you send it, or how you look at a particular time, or those types of things. So if you're going to go through that trouble for a suitor, which by the way is really important, I feel like it's the second most important thing in life is who your spouse is. And so I'm all for finding the right spouse. I found an incredible woman that has really shaped my life. We'll have celebrated 31 years of marriage this year. But so that's really important. But when that young man is around, you're focused, and vice versa. So when I was dating and now, with my wife, boy, I was really focused on her. So you choose what you want to focus on. It's all inside. And that whole thing about being a snowflake, that's all, I don't like the term, but it's garbage.
It's garbage.
That's just not true. And you can overcome that moniker, and you can overcome those things. And it comes down to a little bit of discipline. You have to discipline yourself to stay focused on the right things.
John, the girl who asked that question about the HR wants to do a follow-up question, so I will let her actually speak to you. And so you wanna unmute yourself and ask John the follow-up question. Let's see. Okay.
Sorry, I think I was muted. I don't know why. I would like to firstly thank you again for your very insightful answer regarding the HR managers. And I have a follow-up question, because you mentioned that primarily HR managers focus on the grades when they should also look at the personality of the candidate. And I was wondering if you think that it would be beneficial to change the traditional way the interviews take place, and maybe put candidates to do some case studies instead of asking them what they expect from their future job.
Yeah, I mean, that's a terrific solution. And I think that companies are moving away from those traditional metrics. I'll tell you personally, even though I did well in school, I think that the school concept is antiquated, and I think that there needs to be more focus on what a person is interested in. You know, we've had this whole 100 years of here's the way we do school, boom, 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 and that's it. And so is the model flawed? Yes. So can, you know, our grades as the primary factor, is that flawed? Yes. SAT and ACT scores, is that the way to level the playing field and for, you know, people to get into college, is that flawed? Yes. So the whole system is broken. And the good news is I believe that entrepreneurial companies today, I think, are taking a more holistic approach to the hiring process and to vetting candidates in a different way, and giving more chance to somebody who maybe struggled academically for any number of reasons. You know, there's another question that that Janusz and I had discussed, you know, about education, and there's a European guy, Richard Branson. He was a high school dropout. Those are the few and far between, but there are people that make it with little or no education. I have a cousin that's a
So Richard, can you share more about Richard? Maybe not everybody knows. So he didn't went to college, or what was it?
He was a high school dropout. And he ended up founding Virgin. So Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Hotels, Virgin Cruise Lines now. He's a multi-billionaire. But it's because they call it bootstrap. If anyone's heard of the beauty products Paul Mitchell was another high school dropout. And then I was mentioning my cousin. I have a cousin that's a multi-millionaire. He's not a billionaire, but he's a multi-millionaire. And he was kind of a C-D student, and but he hustled. He was a salesman. He was really good at sales. And so, you know, he found his niche. And so to just look at candidates based on that criteria is definitely not the right way to do things. When I was saying that, even from my own perspective of looking at candidates, it was at a place like Goldman Sachs where that's just a difficult place to break into. And they're getting candidates that went to Harvard or went to Yale and got straight A's and were the captain of this and the president of this and started this company. So, you know, when that's your candidate pool, it's hard to then look at a student that's a C student. You know, you almost don't have a chance. But I do think that the more like the newer companies like Uber and Apple and Google, I think are looking at more than just the grades, but it's an uphill battle, and I do think it should change, and it will change over time.
Thank you.
Do you have another question?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
But if you do, please, text me and I will answer. So.
Yeah.
So another question was, John, how was your time in college? What did you do in college? Did you volunteer for something? I know you said your motto was nothing is easy, and if it's easy, it's a saying that if it's easy, it isn't worth it. So what did you do in college?
So again, just that whole process for me. So I focused in grade school, and then that allowed me to be in the honors program in high school. And then that allowed me to get into a place like Illinois. So then once I was at Illinois, I majored in finance and minored in accounting. For me, those were areas that, one, I enjoyed. And I do think that you have to choose something that you're interested in to focus in college. And, you know, and I would encourage anyone that you major in something specific enough that that there's real job opportunities at the end. And so for me, finance, you could work at any number of places, from banks to investment banks to all companies have a finance department. So, and then there's accounting firms. I mean, it was endless for me. And then again, what I did was I would go to seniors, for instance, in my fraternity, and I would talk to them and say, hey, what classes did you take? What did you do? What did you focus on? And then as they were getting ready to enter the workforce, I would say, so what did your resume look like? What's important? And I just tried to model after who I thought were the best people. That's the thing. That's another important method, is to have somebody that you consider a mentor, that you can listen to and that you can take advice from. So I would go at each year, whatever year I was always looking at the seniors. What are the seniors doing? What do their resumes look like? So I got involved in as many activities as I could. I was the treasurer of my fraternity. I was the vice president of probably 10 different organizations on campus. So I was, the grades were just the beginning. I was trying to have a built out, nice resume that I thought would lead to jobs at the end. And I got a tremendous number of job offers. I shared with Janusz that we had a contest, like who could get the most job offers once I was a senior, and who could get an office visit to a place that was very far away. So if we were in Illinois, could you go to California or New York? And I got a number of job offers. They just weren't at the investment banks that I really, really wanted to work at. But I got outstanding offers, but I had to work very hard to do that. And listen, I said I wasn't a Christian when I was in college. I was out there on the weekends, every night. But during the day, I studied. And I had fun at night, but I studied. And I think I shared with Janusz that there was a fraternity that I wanted to join, and they wanted me to join, but I knew that they had one of the biggest campus parties every Thursday night. And I like to take classes early in the morning, 5 days a week. And so I thought, well, what if I have an 8 a.m. on Friday and people are partying in this house until 2 or 3 in the morning, and I have to be at class and take a test on Friday morning. So I purposely didn't join that fraternity for that reason. But if I wanted to partake in those things, I could, but that was secondary to the grades are going to get me to the next level. I was always looking at what's next, what's the next level. And so for college, it was a career. And where do I want to go and what do I want to do? And what are they looking for? They're looking for grades and they're looking for experience. What have you done? What were you involved in? Who did you help? And those types of things. So I tried to stay as focused as I could on that. I had a great time, but I was very focused on those important things for my resume.
John, 1 or 2 questions because we are getting late, and a question from the audience: what's important? You were in the financial. You worked for the what was it? What was the company you worked for?
Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, you work for Goldman Sachs, which is a financial institution, one of the biggest in the world. So the job is to make money for other people. And the question is, what's important for you in the company? The idea of time means money, or coworkers, or the relationship with the coworkers. So in a way, so what's more important, making money or relationships in the company?
How about both? So I would say that when I was at Goldman, they were paying me a lot of money to make them a lot of money, and And it was very simple, very straightforward. It's like being an athlete. They pay you to score. So here they were paying me a tremendous amount of money to make them a tremendous amount of money. But you don't do that by yourself. And so even listening to David prior to me, it's a team. And this is, I'm going to give you all advice for when you're managing people down the road. So once I started to manage some people and then more people and then a lot of people, like multiple hundreds of people, my goal was to let people thrive. What is it going to take for them to thrive? And different people have different personalities, and you have to learn their personalities and try and work with them. It's not a one size fits all. And so for me, it was very much about teamwork, and it was very much about giving people as much responsibility as I thought they could handle, possibly even more. And so what I had a saying. I would say to people, male and female, I'd say, I'm going to take you to the top of the building, and I'm going to give you a bunch of rope, and I'm going to throw you off the building. And that rope is what you're capable of. And you're either going to fly or you're going to die. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to fly or die. I'm going to give you tremendous opportunity. And I'm very fortunate. There are many individuals that work for me over the years, particularly at Goldman Sachs, that have gone on to do incredible things, running enormous hedge funds. They're in politics. They're CEOs of companies, and at young ages, 23, 25, 27, I gave them incredible opportunity as far as responsibility. And if they prove that they can handle it, they got more responsibility. And so you don't do well in these companies by being an egomaniac or by being a me monster. For me, the formula for success was help others do the best that they can, and in the process, I'm gonna rise up.
Oh, that's amazing, John. I have like 1,000 questions right now in my head that I want to do a follow-up, and I still have that image with your employees on the top of the building and the rope, and now many of them succeeded, and so that's a great idea, great image. But my final question to you, John, is what drives you to have this attitude in personal life, in the business, to help others, to thrive others, so others can thrive? What's the center of your life? Why do you act like this?
Yes. So I mentioned that there was a dividing point in my life, and I had some success leading up to being a Christian and accepting Jesus as my personal savior. But it was really after that the Lord blessed me tremendously. Prior to that, it was mostly my own effort. But post being saved, post being a born again believer, I really allowed God to be the center of my life, and He opened doors and He closed doors. That Goldman opportunity didn't come before I was saved. And I'm not saying that becoming a Christian is going to just open up all these doors. It's just that for me, once I became a Christian, actually, I was willing to lay down everything. I was literally, I got saved and married my wife the same year. That year, I was willing to go on the mission field. I was willing to put it all aside. but God didn't do that. God said, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you in the workplace. I'm going to let you be a light in a dark place. And God gave me wisdom, and God gave me favor beyond any realm of comprehension, and open doors, and even allowing me to make partner at Goldman Sachs. Most of the partners at Goldman Sachs went to Harvard, Oxford, Princeton, Yale. They didn't go to University of Illinois. There's 3 of us in the partner class from conception till today. I think there's 3 that went to the University of Illinois. There's hundreds that went to Harvard, as an example. But for God to open that door for me, and just how he blessed me and gave me wisdom to do those things, to put others ahead of myself. I was a selfish, stingy, no good nothing before I got saved. I was focused on me, myself, and I. And post that, I learned that it's just the opposite. I need to put others ahead of myself, and in the process, God bless me. So that was the turning point of my life. That's been the focus of my life subsequently, and that's what drives me to this day.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you took the time to speak to the Romanian audience and share about your life, your life values, what drives you to help other people, your expertise, and definitely we would like to have you again and speak more and share more stories like that story on the with your employees. Everybody's clapping, so thank you so much, John. Acum
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, John. Vă spuneam, fiecare dintre vorbitori a vorbit despre importanța unui mentor și la Liderii de Mâine ne dorim să ajutăm generația asta de studenți prin a gestiona mai bine această perioadă și nu doar a gestiona, ci pur și simplu să se dezvolte mai bine, să se dezvolte sănătos. Și atunci oferim acest program de mentorare care se întâmplă în felul următor. Timp de 40 de minute te întâlnești cu unul dintre studenții lideri sau mentori, fie că este făiat, fie că este băiat. Vă stabiliți un scop pe domeniul profesional, personal și spiritual și lucrați la acel. Poate vă doriți să învățați mai bine sau să dezvoltați anumite abilități, să vă creșteți comunicarea, să creșteți empatia. Un lider vă poate ajuta în direcția asta. Și dacă nu ați făcut-o încă, vă mai dau link-ul o dată și vă dau acum cam un minut până să completați acel formular și după un minut începem și vom juca un joc prin care vom oferi 3 cărți de leadership. 3 cărți de leadership, vom juca un mic joc de Kahoot și ne vom juca împreună acest joc care va dura foarte puțin, va dura cam 5 minute, dar vă mai dau timp acum să mai completați acest sondaj și între timp o să pornesc jocul să ne jucăm. Am mai jucat cineva Kahoot? Știți despre ce e vorba? Nu? Bun, deci completați, vă mai las un minut.